And right now we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick alongside Katie Greifeld taking you through to that closing bell with a global simulcast. Massar and Tim Stenovec join us right now. Welcome to our audiences across all of our Bloomberg platforms, television, radio, our partnership with YouTube as we await some earnings after the bell out of Texas Instruments and Seagate, with tech stocks leading the charge in equity markets. But the story heading into the close right now, a huge spike in gold and a huge plunge in the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, even before we see, I'm just taking a look at the dollar index. It's now down about 1.3%. So definitely dropping on this headline from President Trump. Having said that, the greenback is really languishing at the bottom of the G10 currency pile this year, whether it's trade frictions, investor caution among an unpredictable White House, risks around Fed independence. There's been a lot of reasons why we've seen the dollar under pressure as of late, but taking another leg down on those comments by President Trump today.
But can we just say what those comments were?
Yeah, I have them right. Okay, so
Tim.
the president said the dollar is doing great. He doesn't think the dollar declined too much, and this is the one that got things moving. Trump isn't concerned about the decline in the dollar. He said you can have it up or down like a yo-yo. The dollar's seeking its own level, which is fair. China, Japan have always wanted to devalue currency, and that's when we saw the dollar tumble after the president said he's not concerned with its decline. He was making some comments in a diner in Iowa just before taking the stage. Yeah. He's speaking about affordability. He's scheduled to do that at 4 o'clock. And that's in Clive, Iowa, but he still hasn't taken the stage.
Yeah, and it gets to this idea, too. I mean, kind of saying the quiet part out loud. The market has been speculating really for months now that this was, to a certain extent, de facto U.S. policy, certainly within the Treasury, not necessarily at the Fed, although that could change with the new Fed chair. And now the president basically saying what a lot of us have already known for quite some time. Let's walk you through the equity market here. We did have an update here for the S&P and NASDAQ. I believe the S&P closing at a record high. Double check me on that, up about 28 points or 0.4% on the day. The NASDAQ up about 0.9%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average sitting this one out, a drop of about 0.8%. And the Russell 2000, which spent a portion of the day in the red, finishing higher by about 0.25 percentage point.
All right, that is an overview. Let's go back to the S&P 500. Kind of an even split. 234 names in the S&P 500 higher today. Katie, 269 to the downside.
You take a look at how the sectors performed today. You had 9 sectors in the green, 2 in the red. It was an update in the equity market, and I believe it was a record high. Romaine Bostick, big tech performing up by about 1.4%. Really interesting to see the beating that the healthcare sector took, down about 1.7%. Of course, the big news from yesterday after the close was that Medicare Advantage payment rates are going to rise by just 0.09% next year. That was certainly a surprise, and you can see that in some of these shares.
Yeah, we're getting earnings right now. Qorvo crossing the wire, and so too is Texas Instruments, a chip maker, but not necessarily the sexy ones that we like to talk about here, industrials, automotives. The company appears to have missed on its fourth quarter EPS. For the fourth quarter, $1.27. The street was looking for $1.30. That's what it actually had posted a year ago, so a drop year over year and slightly below street estimates. Revenue did grow up about 10%, but just in line with estimates at about $4.42 billion. 14% growth in the analog business and about 8% growth in that embedded processing business as well. The shares oscillating between gains and losses, looks like right now up about 3% in the after hours trade.
Yeah, trying to decide what to do with that fourth quarter EPS miss. I will say that this is a stock that needed some good news. You think about how it's been performing over the past year or so, higher by just about 5%, 8% when you take a look at total return. That is far underperforming what we're seeing out of some of the other chip makers and what we're seeing in tech overall.
Not a lot of commentary from Haviv Alan, the chairman, president, and CEO of Texas Instruments, just calling out that revenue decreased 7% sequentially, but increased 10% from the same quarter a year ago. Over the past 12 months, we invested $3.9 billion in R&D and SG&A, invested $4.6 billion in CapEx, and returned $6.5 billion to owners.
Yeah, I'm just looking at free cash flow for the fourth quarter, $1.33 billion. That's up 65% year over year. So a big move there. R&D expenses are up about 6.1% year over year, coming in a little bit lighter. No, actually a little bit above what the street was expecting. So just keeping an eye on that one. Still up about 3.3%. And it's actually up for the year. I think it's up about 9 or 10% already here in 2026. So looking to build on that gain, Romaine.
Yeah, and just real quickly, I just want to check in on Qorvo, a much smaller cap company, but the share is down 11%, also in the chip space, more so for the mobile business here. The company saying that adjusted EPS did beat in this fiscal third quarter. It looks like adjusted revenue also beat here, but the guidance light, $775 million to $825 million for the fiscal fourth quarter revenue. The street, on average, is looking for $904 million. Shares down about 10%.
All right, guys, let's go to some of the individual gainers. Just want to mention Corning, which at its highs was up 20% in today's session, finishing with a gain of about 16%. I think it's the number one gainer in the S&P 500 on this Tuesday. This after the company announced a multi-year up to $6 billion agreement with Meta Platforms to supply optical fiber, cable, and connectivity solutions for Meta's advanced data center, supporting its AI ambition. So an AI play, as we know there. Corning, by the way, CNBC pointing this out, which reported the deal initially earlier today, saying Corning is expanding its facility to cater to rising demand from the likes of Meta, NVIDIA, OpenAI, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft. And that stock is certainly been quite an outperformer in today's trading, I should say, or actually year to date. I'll get it there eventually. It does report earnings before the market open tomorrow. We are awaiting Seagate, which is expected to report any moment. It's the number 4 gainer in the S&P 500, a top performer in the S&P 500 last year. And you can see that name actually up about 4.5% in today's session. Analysts have been raising their price targets ahead of earnings today in the last few days. And today, Mizuho Securities raised the target on Seagate to 400 from 370, maintaining its outperform rating. And the stock is already up about 40% year to date. I don't think it's out yet, but it should be reporting shortly. And then HCA Healthcare up about 7% here at the close today, I believe to a record close in today's session. Shares gaining after the company reported better than expected guidance, easing investor concerns about expiring Affordable Care Act subsidiaries, or subsidies, I should say. And so that stock up about 7%. Katie, I think we have Seagate out.
We certainly do. Let's take a quick look at what's going on with Seagate, reporting that second quarter revenue came in at $2.83 billion. That is slightly ahead of estimates of $2.75 billion. For their adjusted EPS, that was a beat as well, coming in at $3.11 for the second quarter. The estimate had come in at $2.83. You can see the negative reaction there as well, looking for more detail, but have to imagine that comes down to the forecast, because taking a look at the second quarter results, certainly a lot of good news there.
Yeah, it's up 35% year to date. So a little bit of a decline on the day today with these earnings, down 3.2% after hours. Hey, speaking of stocks that are lower, let's take a look at some decliners today. Katie, you mentioned health insurance companies weighing on the trade today. Certainly saw that with United Healthcare, CVS, and Humana. United down 19.6%, CVS down 14%, Humana down more than 21%. This after the U.S. proposed holding payments to private Medicare plans flat next year. United Health sees first annual revenue drop in more than 30 years. Also, shares of JetBlue took a leg lower today. The company reported a wider loss than expected last quarter. It's challenging its strategy to win over high-paying customers. As far as the numbers go, adjusted loss of 49 cents per share, 3 cents worse than the average analyst estimate. Shares of JetBlue down 6.9% today. Operating revenue did come in slightly ahead of Wall Street expectations. And finally, shares of Pinterest fell today. The company's laying off less than 15% of its workforce. It plans to reduce office space as part of a global restructuring. Shares fell today by 9.6%. It does expect the actions to be completed by the end of the third quarter and sees about $35 to $45 million in pre-tax restructuring charges. Pinterest down 9.6%.
All right, we take a quick look at yields. A bit of divergence between the long end and the short end of the curve. 2-year yields dropping modestly by about 2 basis points here, but more activity on the longer end of the curve. You have the 10-year there, but we need to see that 30-year yield. The 30-year yield right now up 4 basis points to that 4.8 level and change here. Some concern right now about the potential for it to get back up to that 5% level.